My name is Ravi Iyer. I'm the managing director of the University of Southern California Marshall School's Neely Center, and I'm here to talk to you today about a bill that was recently introduced in Minnesota to protect citizens from unwanted experiences, and especially to protect our kids. So the bill has four main features: privacy by default, responsible amplification, sensible rate limits, and then mandating not encouraging greater usage of these products for children. And then it also includes some provisions around transparency so that we can understand future risk that may be revealed by the product experimentation and design choices of these platforms. So let me talk about each of these in turn. I'll start by privacy by default, and you'll see here a quote in green by someone complaining to the Minnesota Attorney General's office about receiving unwanted pictures from accounts that they were not connected to, right? They didn't have to add these people back. They were just forced to see these pictures, and many cases of manipulation and fraud begin with unwanted contact from strangers. Now, it's not to say that most youth are getting unwanted contact from strangers, but a significant minority of youth do report this. In research detailed in the Wall Street Journal, 1 in 8 users under the age of 16 said they experienced unwanted sexual advances on Instagram. In a study of adolescents in Utah, 26% reported being involved in unwanted conversations. And these unwanted conversations can lead to very serious consequences, right? So, the FBI recently put out a bulletin about sextortion, talking about how, they've in the past few years had over 12,000 cases where and these are just the cases that people have reported to them, right? Like many people are too embarrassed to report these things to the FBI. So these are cases that rose to enough seriousness that they got reported to the FBI. Largely involving teenage boys. And, you can imagine, if you're a teenage boy, you may not understand in the way that an adult might, that, if you get a message from an attractive stranger, that message may actually not be real. It might be there to manipulate you. You might just be excited, right? And that's kind of a part of being a youth, is your brain is still developing. So, unfortunately, 20 plus of these kids have actually committed suicide as a result of sextortion. And these things can be stopped by just not allowing messages to be sent to accounts that are not from your extended network, right? So we don't let strangers contact our kids in our schools, and we shouldn't let them contact our kids in their bedrooms as well, right? When they're on their phones. So that's one of the provisions of our privacy by default provisions. Users can still initiate messages to others, but they can't be sent messages from outside their network. Their account and their content are not publicly visible. Their information is not allowed to be integrated into AI models. Their location can't be revealed, and then content from those users can't be forwarded to others. Right? And so these are all things that users can change themselves if they want to, right? But platforms can't cajole them to do so. So your default when you sign up for these platforms is you're private by default, and then if you want to be more public, then you can choose to be more public. Another aspect of these bills is responsible amplification. So many users report having experiences with unwanted, disturbing, graphic, sexual content, often recommended by AI-powered algorithms. But sometimes this kind of content is not necessarily super serious in terms of its impact, but it is relatively common. In one Facebook study, 70+% of users reported seeing something that they wanted to see less of in the first, oftentimes in the first 5 minutes of logging onto these platforms, and often multiple times, right? So it's a fairly common experience. It may not have a huge impact on many of us, right? It might take the form of disgusting content or a fight video. But especially for our youth, it can have serious consequences. And so one stat that was very convincing for me was the stats around pornography. According to a study, this is a couple years old, so the numbers might have changed a bit. I think if they did change, they probably changed for the worse. But the average age of pornography exposure is age 12. And 58% of youth say they come upon pornography accidentally. And many of them say it's violent porn, right, which has been linked to risk of abuse later in life, right? So this isn't a 16-year-old boy trying to find porn, which is something that on the internet is going to be hard to stop. This is like a 12-year-old who's maybe not ready for to see such content encountering it by accident. Um, that is definitely a solvable problem, and so our response to responsible application is just to ask platforms to instead of optimizing for what people spend time on, and we know we're all guilty of spending time on things that are not good for us. We've all um, lingered too much on a fight video or some disturbing content or something that's more sexual in nature. But we know it's not good for us, and we often will not choose to engage with such content. We don't want more of it necessarily. Um, and so instead of optimizing for what we spend time looking at, we can instead optimize for what we explicitly request to see as users and create interfaces. And platforms have done this. Many platforms have done this, not just Meta, but YouTube has systems like this as well. Almost all platforms have survey systems to ask users explicitly what they want to see, as opposed to assuming what they engage with is what they want. And they can also look for content that is perceived to be high quality by diverse users. And if we optimize for these two things instead of what people engage with, we'll get better outcomes. Another thing that we try to address is the fact that misinformation, abuse, trolling, these are all things that come from small groups of people. Most people are good people. Most people online are still good people. But it's a small group of people who engage in these negative activities, and they end up affecting a much broader group of people because they tend to be more active. They tend to be the groups of people who are willing to comment on hundreds of comment threads in a day because they have some ideological agenda, not on any one side or the other, but they just are particularly motivated. They tend to be the ones who are also willing to get into arguments with people and fight with people and attack people. And if we can just create sensible rate limits so that these small groups of people are not being amplified and that the spaces are actually more democratic, matching the rhetoric of these platforms, then many of the problems that we see in these spaces will be better. And so we ask in the bill to create sensible rate limits. We ask that new users can't exceed the median user activity, so they can't start inviting tons of people to groups or messaging others until they have some history. And then even established users should have some of the impact of their usage reduced as they engage in excessive usage, right? So if you're going to be someone who's going to comment, on all sorts of threads all over the internet, well, maybe you shouldn't be the top comment on all those threads, especially if you get all your friends to like your comments or reply on it. We should have a little bit of a democratization of the space where, just like in real life, if you try to dominate a conversation, we have ways that we sort of make it more space for other people to engage. We should have more space online, and that will mitigate the impact of some of these users who both attack other users or try to manipulate other users through their excessive activity. The last part in the design side is really around not encouraging greater usage for kids. So one stat that's not on here, 70+% of kids in one Common Sense Media study feel that they are being manipulated by these platforms to spend more time on them. So this is not us telling kids that they spend too much time on these platforms. This is kids telling us that they feel manipulated to spend more time on these platforms, right? Here's a stat from the Minnesota college students here. 55% of college students in Minnesota in one poll reported having an issue with excessive computer and internet use. So this is not us, again, telling them that they're using these things too much. It's just them telling us that they have a problem with excessive computer and internet use. And it's affecting their academics, right? Almost half of them are saying it's affecting their academics. So we need to help them with that. I think they're, obviously platforms have an interest in getting people to use their platforms more. We don't want to race to the bottom where, AI-powered algorithms are constantly optimized for time spent and showing you something that will get you to just use it just a little bit more, right? So we ask that platforms, at least for kids, and we identify kids not by any age. We're not saying that below a certain age this has to happen, but we're saying that if you have a device that is under parental control, if you're a parent and you buy your kid a device that you designate as a kid's device, then it just works a little bit differently. At whatever age you think is appropriate, you can change that out. And among the different things that happen are you no longer will see optimized feeds for time spent or content consumed. So they won't show you a particular engaging video just to get you to spend more time on the platform. You won't have content feeds without finite endings, otherwise known as infinite scroll. You won't have autoplay videos. There'll be just a little bit of friction for you to think about, okay, do I want to keep using this product or not, intentionally, right? We won't have notifications that are not time sensitive. I think we've all received notifications on our phones that really are not time sensitive. They're just designed to get you to use the product more. And we won't have any more visible counts of engagement that sort of gamify use of these platforms and get you to use these products just to increase the counts of likes and comments and streaks that you have, but instead use them because you actually want to use them. So if we do all these things, we don't have any illusion that we're going to solve all of the bad things that happen online. Bad things will happen online just like they happen offline. But ideally, the same forces that operate offline, things like reputation, things like not allowing small groups of people to dominate a space, things like the fact that people will optimize for what people want as opposed to what people engage with. All of the things hopefully will make the online space similar to the offline space, where the same forces that mitigate problematic offline behavior will mitigate problematic online behavior. And so effectively, the proposed bill will outline design choices that platforms know lead to negative outcomes. And I honestly don't think platforms want to engage in these things, especially with regards to our kids. I think they would be glad to operate on a level platform where you're not competing for more time spent to show people a more engaging video to not lose market share to your competitor, but rather you're competing on value and quality, and there's some minimum standards so that responsible platforms compete on a level playing field with those that are not. Thank you.